Hello again. Today we are going to be making something that some people consider to be one of the most American dishes you can make. You've heard the saying, as American as apple pie. That's what we're going to make today, is apple pie. Apple pie actually isn't an American invention. It's actually been around since the ancient Romans and Greeks. So we can't actually claim it, but we do it pretty well, especially in the summer holidays. We've had Memorial Day, we had 4th of July, and then upcoming Labor Day weekend are great times to make and to eat an apple pie. So today that's what I'm going to show you how to do. You have two types of ingredients that you need to make an apple pie. You have your crust ingredients and your filling ingredients. The crust is really simple. All you need are three ingredients. You need flour, you need some kind of shortening, whether it's Crisco, whether it's butter, which is what I'm going to use today, or you can even use lard. Older people in the United States love crust made with lard. I think they are very gross, so I'm going to use butter, but if you have lard around and you want to use it, go for it. It's going to work just as well. And the third ingredient is going to be salt. That's it. If you have those three ingredients, you can make a crust for any kind of a pie, but today it's going to be apple. Of course, then you have to make the filling, and again, the filling is only like 4 ingredients. Of course, you have to have apples. You're going to need between 6 and 8, depending on the size. I chose Braeburn apples, which are kind of a sweet and sour apple both together. I like to have my apples in my pies be just a little bit sweeter. The Red Delicious version of apple, while it's a great apple, is not a good pie apple. You want one that's going to be a little bit more tart and a little bit more firm than that kind of apple. So Braeburn is a good one. Jonathan is another good one. It's up to you which one you like. Some people even like Granny Smith, which are the all green ones. I don't like those. I go for the Braeburns. That's my favorite. So you're going to need 6 to 8 Braeburns, depending on size again. You're going to need some cinnamon. And if you like nutmeg and you have it around the house, go ahead and throw that in there. I personally think nutmeg is disgusting, so I don't use it. But my grandmother always liked to put nutmeg in hers. So you're going to need your apples, you're going to need your cinnamon, especially if you're using a tartar apple, you're going to really want some sugar in there, and you're going to use just a little bit of flour to make sure that your pie doesn't turn out too runny. That's it. That's all you need to make a really good apple pie. Of course, the basis of any pie is going to be the crust, and like I told you, the crust for this pie is really easy. All you have to remember is the ratio 3 to 1. So you're going to put in 3 times the flour that you put in of the butter. So if you're making just one little pie, I would put in a 1/3 cup of butter, or lard or margarine or whatever it is that you're using, and then a full cup of the flour. Today, because I'm making a pie that has both a bottom crust and a top layer, I'm going to actually use a cup of the butter, and so then with the 3 to 1 ratio, I'm going to need 3 cups of the flour. So that's what we're going to go ahead and start out with. So let me cut up my butter here. I just left this out. This is kind of room temperature. Butter does tend to have a problem if you don't leave it out for a little bit, then it's not very easy to work with, and you want to make sure it's not frozen or straight out of the fridge, because otherwise you're going to have a really, really hard time getting the butter to be soft enough to work into your dough. Approximates are okay, so you don't have to make it be exactly a cup. I'm actually just going to add a little bit more of this and put it in there. And so there's my cup of butter, more or less. And then, again, with my 3 to 1 ratio, I'm going to use 3 cups of my flour. And so that one was a little bit of a big cup, so the next one will be a little smaller. No problem. Cooking is not an exact science. You're not going to kill anybody if you put in a little too much flour or a little too little butter. So as long as you're using actual food ingredients, it's okay. Now, I have 2 of my 3 main ingredients. Here's my salt. I really like to put in a lot of salt. Some people don't like to put in very much. So if you're watching your salt intake, or you just don't like the flavor of salt, don't put in very much, maybe a teaspoon. I personally really like to have a little bit of the salt flavor come out because it really does balance the sweet of the apple pie filling. So I'm probably putting in maybe a teaspoon and a half, maybe a little bit more. I like it. Now, so now you have this. This does not look like a pie crust. And so you actually, there's a special way that you take this to make this take it from this and turn it into a pie crust. Perhaps you have seen something like this hanging around your kitchen, your grandmother's kitchen. This was my grandmother's and this is mine. You can see the technology has not changed very much. This is actually called a pastry blender, and pie dough like this is called pastry dough in the United States. So if you have one of these and you want to, this is a very easy way to use. All you do is put it down in your dough and you just make short clockwise turns, just like this. And that's gonna make the dough, it'll turn it out just perfect for you. This is actually easier than the method I'm gonna show you, but not everybody has this sitting around at your house. So if you don't have it sitting around, no problem. Grab yourself just 2 regular butter knives, regular knives that you would use at the table. That's what you wanna use for this. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna actually use these sort of the way that scissors work. So scissors are attached here and they kind of cut this way. That's what you're gonna do. You're gonna turn these into scissors and you're going to literally cut the dough together. So what you do is you just place them together in the middle and you just slide it right on through. And you're just gonna continue doing this until you get about pea-sized lumps in your batter. Okay, so after a little bit, maybe 5 minutes, maybe less, you're going to end up with your dough looking like this. So you can see that there's some various sizes of pieces of dough in there, but it's about the size of a pea. So as long as you have, most of them are about that size, you're fine. What you're going to do then, of course, this is not going to make a very good dough. You have to add some liquid to it. And so I have just a little bit of water. How much water, you ask? It depends on the day. Is it dry outside? Is it humid outside? Depending on the answer to that question, you're going to use more or less liquid in this particular part. So it doesn't really matter. Some people say that it's really important to have this water be really, really cold. They say that'll actually make your pastry a little bit more flaky. I pulled this just, it's room temperature and it's going to be fine. So don't worry about it, but if you really want to do it by the book, go ahead and add some ice cubes to it and make it really cold. So as you can see, all I did was just pour it in here. Pastry dough likes to be gently treated. You don't want to sit here and stir and stir and stir and stir and stir. So you add in a little bit of water and just, it's pretty obvious pretty quickly that I need more water. So I'm just going to add in more water here, but you know, I don't want to be stirring it. I want to spend the least amount of effort on this. Pastry dough needs to have a gentle touch. So you're just going to keep adding liquid until your dough reaches a dough-like consistency. So once you have your dough in a dough-like consistency, you're just going to, it's ready, it's time to roll it out and put it into the pie. So what you're going to need is some sort of a non-stick paper. This is wax paper or something like that, so it doesn't matter. As long as it's non-stick, that's what you want. Otherwise, you can roll it out on your tabletop, but just make sure that it's been cleaned recently because this is going to be something that you're going to eat. So I prefer to put it down on this. And then of course, to further the whole non-stick thing, you just need to throw down some flour. Doesn't matter how much, at this point there's enough flour in the dough that it's not going to make any difference. So for one pie, for just the bottom crust, you're going to need a lump of dough about the size of your fist. Maybe a little bit bigger, it doesn't really matter. Because worst case scenario, if it's too big, you just cut it off. If it's too small, you patch it. No big deal. And you want to make sure when you're working with pie dough that it does stay fairly floured on the top and on the bottom. Otherwise it's going to stick and you're going to have a big mess. So you can use a lot of flour on this. You also want to make sure that you flour the rolling pin before you start this process. If you forget this, it will stick and you will be sad because you'll have holes in your dough and then that just takes longer to roll it out. So once you have your dough sufficiently floured, and I just kind of spread it out a little bit with my fingers, then it's time to go ahead and roll it out. The best way to roll out dough is just to start in the middle, equal pressure on both sides, and just push it out to the outside. And then again, this is another reason I like to work with it on a piece of paper, is because then you can turn the dough. If you're rolling it out just on your tabletop, you can't turn it around, so it's harder to work with. Flip it over, you might have that problem, but the nice thing about dough is that it's pretty easy to roll back together. So just keep working it that way, rolling it out from the center, making sure that you're getting it to be equally flat all the way around. And really, once you've done this enough times, you can kind of tell by feel if, like this, I can tell right now that this part's just a little bit thicker than the rest. So just give it another roll and it's good. So that's it. You can tell if you've got it rolled out big enough by taking your pie plate and just putting it right on top. If you can see dough around the outside of your pie plate, you're good. You don't need to roll it out anymore. Now, this is my super secret trick that I'm going to teach you that is going to make making pies so much easier for you. Because I know what you're thinking. Kristen, how do I get that dough into that pan? Well, there's a simple trick. It involves, again, having this paper on you. So really, don't roll this out on your countertop. Roll it out on the paper. It's just so much easier. What you're going to do is you're going to lay your rolling pin. And by the way, if you don't have a rolling pin at home, well, A, go out and buy one because you need one. Everybody does. But if you don't have one and you really want to make this today, grab a wine bottle or some other kind of bottle that you have in the house. Bottles work just as well, especially if they're long and thin. But really, go buy one of these. It's worth it. Or inherit one. That's what I did. This was my grandma's. So what you're going to do is you're going to lay your rolling pin, bottle, whatever it is that you're rolling this out with, at the corner of your dough. And then you're going to take your paper and you're going to flip it up. Now, you can see that it's sticking a little bit because I didn't put enough flour on the bottom, but at this point it's okay. And you can see that I'm actually rolling the dough up around the rolling pin. At this point, I don't want to start rolling this other side into the dough, so I'm just going to use this to pick up the dough, and I'm just going to gently lay it back over the pie plate. And that was really easy. That's all you have to do. So now, I have my dough in my pie plate, ready to go, and ready to start making the apple. Once your bottom pie crust is ready, it's time to put the apple in the apple pie and make the filling. So like I said before, you're going to need somewhere between 6 and 8 apples, depending on whether you like them tart, whether you like them sweet, totally up to you. This is a pretty decent sized apple, so I think I'm probably only going to use about 6 of these. And to cut these up and make them ready for the pie, there's really no wrong way to do it. I personally prefer cutting it in half and then again cutting it into quarters and just dealing with something this size instead of trying to deal with the whole apple. You're also going to notice that I don't cut off the skins, and there's a very good reason for that. I am lazy and I do not mind apple skins in my apple pies. Some people think that is a major no-no, and honestly if I was entering it in an apple pie contest I probably would cut them off. But because I'm making this for myself and my friends, we're all going to deal with the skins. And the skins are the best part for you. When you're taking off the skins, you're taking out all the fiber of the apple. So just go ahead, keep the skin on. It's pretty delicious. The size of the slices doesn't really matter. The important thing is that they're uniform. You don't want to have one that's really, really thick and one that's really, really thin. The problem is the really, really thin one will cook quickly. The really, really thick one won't cook at all, or it'll take a lot longer to cook. And then that just makes it kind of a weird texture inside of your pie. So as long as you have them fairly similarly sized when you're cutting them, it's no problem. That'll work out. And so you're just going to cut up your apples. Like I said, you're going to need anywhere between 6 to 8. And you just want to put them in a big size bowl, and preferably one with a lid. And you'll see why I'm talking about a lid in just a minute. Once you cut up your apples, you're going to have a pretty decent size stash. I would say if you're counting this in cups, each apple should be somewhere between 3/4 of a cup and a cup. So I probably have about 6 cups of apples here. That's going to be maybe a little bit too much, but we're going to put some stuff on these apples and it's going to make them really good. So even if you have leftovers, don't worry, they won't go to waste. So once you have your apples all cut up, you need to add the stuff that makes the apple pie even better than just the apples. And the first thing, of course, with that is going to be sugar. Again, like I said before, if you have super, super tart or sour apples, you might want a little bit more sugar. If you're using a little bit of a sweeter apple, you could use less if you wanted to, but general consensus says about 3/4 of a cup is going to be just fine for your sugar. You can use white sugar. I actually really like to use brown sugar when I make apple pies, but I'm going to use white sugar today because that's what I had around. So just use your sugar and pour it right on top. You're also going to add some cinnamon, and you can actually get that here. And you need about a teaspoon. If you really like cinnamon, you can use more. And if you don't like it, you can use less. And this is also the part, if you wanted to, you could add in the nutmeg. I personally will never add nutmeg in because I think it's gross, but my grandmother always did. Other things that you can add in at this point would be cloves, allspice, anything like that. If you have it and you like it, go ahead and use it. But otherwise, just cinnamon and sugar is going to be really, really good. You're also going to add in just a tiny bit of flour, and by a tiny bit I mean less than a tablespoon. And the reason is apples are a pretty juicy fruit. And so what happens when they're cooking is they release those juices. And if you've ever had anything spill over onto the bottom of your stove, you know it's really annoying. when you have apple juices spilling over to the bottom of your stove, it takes forever to clean them because they're very sticky. So take my advice, add in just a little bit of flour. Now, normally at this point, you would take your spoon and you would stir it up. But here's my question. A, why are you dirtying another utensil? And B, what's going to happen when all that stuff comes out the sides? So instead of using a spoon, use a bowl that has a lid. And just use the lid as your spoon. Let's give it a little bit of shake. You're not going to hurt those apples. And really, in the end, you're going to be just as well coated as if you'd used a spoon. And it makes a lot less mess. And it's fun. That makes a great noise. Let's hear it again. Right? Fun. And you have your perfectly coated apple. No problem. So that is how you make the filling of your apple pie. So what do you need to do? You need to fill it. You're going to notice this looks a little bit different. I did cut off the outside edges, but don't throw those away. That is wasteful. We can use them later. So I just cut out the outside edges to make a nice outside edge like this. And now I'm going to add in my apple filling. And it's really, really tough. You just take it out of one bowl and put it in the other. Apples, when they cook, are actually going to shrink. So I was talking about all those juices coming out. Well, those juices come out and then the apples will get smaller. So you don't want to just fill your pie up to the top. You actually want to have it be heaping up a little bit. Because otherwise what's going to happen is your apples are going to sink down and the crust that you're going to put on top of this is going to stay up and you're going to have like weird looking air holes. So it's okay if it looks like you're overfilling the pie. You're not actually overfilling it, you're just making it better. So the more apples you put in there, the better, right? It's the point, it's an apple pie. You want it to have a lot of good and delicious apples. And so just something like that, give it maybe an inch or two of top part, that's fine. You don't want to like have it be up to here unless you're putting over a full crust top. We're going to do a lattice, and so we just want to have it be stacked just about like that. And you'll see this is probably maybe a half apple's worth of leftovers, but this apple plus sugar plus cinnamon is an awesome snack. So save that and eat it later. The last thing you want to do before you start putting the final crust on top of this is just add a little bit of your butter. And what that's going to do is just kind of help to make the insides, it's just going to kind of seal in all that delicious flavor that you have. That butter will just kind of melt out and kind of seal in the top of this. So make sure you add just a little bit more butter. And now we're ready to roll out our top crust and hurry up and get this apple pie in the oven because it's going to be really good. Say another hello to our good friend the dough. So we've already made the bottom of the pie, we put the apples in, and now we have two types of dough. We have the dough that we haven't used yet, and we have the leftover dough from the bottom crust. Both are equally usable, and actually for a lattice crust, I actually like to start with a base of this dough that's already been rolled out once. Remember I said that pie dough is temperamental, and it is. If you work it around, the more you work it around, the tougher it gets. But for the top part of a lattice style pie, which is what we're going to make, it's okay to use this dough that's already been worked through once. But if you were going to do a full crust, you probably just want to start out with your new dough, and then we could have something else to do with this later. But we're doing a lattice, so we'll use our old dough with a mixture of our new. So just like we did before, we're just going to roll this out. And thankfully my paper's sticking down a little bit better, so it'll be easier to see. Again, we're going to start out with about a fist-sized amount of dough, and you can see I'm just putting in, this is the new dough, this is the old dough. In about a minute here, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So, same thing, making sure that it is well floured on all sides so that we don't have a lot of sticking problems. And when you're rolling this out, you're going to notice this doesn't roll out quite as nicely because, again, you do have some of that dough that's already been worked in there. But it'll still work out. And as you can tell, there's not really a whole lot of variation. You can feel it when you're rolling out, but to look at it, you'll never know the difference. So you're going to roll this out, and you're going to try and get it to be about the same size as you had before. But I always like, when I'm doing the lattice crust, to just go ahead and try and make it a little bit longer on one side. It doesn't need to be that perfect circle because we're not putting it into a circular shaped vessel this time. This time we're going to actually cut this up and use it that way. So something like that is going to be just fine, no problem. And then now you're done with that. You don't need the rolling pin anymore. So I'm going to bring the pie back over here because these strips are actually going to go straight onto the pie. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to start cutting this up. And usually that I just kind of stick off to the side. I'm probably not going to use it. The strips can be any width, so you can have them be thick, you can have them be thin. Actually, a lattice looks really nice if you have kind of a variation. If you're entering this in a contest, you probably want to try and make sure that everything is the same width from one end to the other. If you're just making this for yourself and your friends, it doesn't really matter. It all tastes the same. So straightness isn't necessarily a really important thing when you're coming to a lattice crust. So you're just going to cut these up. And this is going to be the basis of the lattice. Now, what is a lattice, you might be asking? I've been using that term a lot. A lattice is sort of similar to like a ladder, where it's going to have layers. And so what we use lattice for especially is around, like if you see a porch in the United States, it's got the wood that kind of crisscrosses like this. That's a lattice. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to make a lattice on top of this pie. You always want to start with your biggest and longest strips. And you're just going to put them over the center of the pie. And so you're just going to kind of make a cross over the center of the pie. Just like that. And you do want there to be a little bit of extra dough hanging out on the edge, and we'll show you why in just a minute. Now, the next part is a little bit more tricky. You can do it one of two ways. You can just lay the strips on and go, or you can make it a true lattice where you actually alternate which side is going to be up. So right now we have this one is on the bottom and this one is on the top. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this up and I'm just going to lay it back over the top, and I'm going to put this down, and then I'll put this back down, and now we have an alternation. So this one's on the top, that one's on the bottom, and we move out, and anything you do on this side, you do on this other side. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll pick this up, we'll take our other, these are the ones that I cut a little bit thinner, lay it about equidistant apart, and put it down just like that. So now we've got that is on top and these are on the bottom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, those were on the bottom last time, so now this side gets picked up, and now we're going to put something so that goes underneath it. And it's kind of hard to explain, but I promise you when you're doing it in your own kitchen, you'll figure it out really quickly. So that way you have things that go over and under, and it will be absolutely delicious. So that's what you're going to do. You just take your dough. You can put these really closely together. You can have them really spread out apart. It doesn't really make any big difference. It's completely what you want to do with your own apple pie. So I have this much dough and this is how I cut it. So I'm just going to lay it out like that. And so you can kind of see you have this lattice design. And actually now that we've done it there, we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the dough. So you're going to end up just having that crisscross pattern all the way across your pie. And that's it. Once you have your lattice done, this is done. Oh wait, except for these little tails. What are you going to do with those? Well, first thing you're going to do is you're just going to take your knife and you're just going to cut around. And again, don't waste these. Don't waste these ends, because there are things that you can do with them. You can also just kind of pull them off, because this is all going to get incorporated into the dough. So you can use a knife if you want the nice edge, or you can just pull them off. That's up to you. So once you have that, then what you're going to do is you're going to press it down into the side dough. So hopefully you've started out with a little bit of a lip around your pie pan. I think most pie pans start out with a lip. But if not, you can just kind of push it down inside too. It doesn't really matter. And then the last part that you're going to do is called the crimp. Well, you can do the crimp, or if you have a knife, you can do the knife thing around, but I think the crimp looks nicer. So what you do to the crimp is just, you have your tool right here. It's your little pincher fingers. Just take your pincher fingers, you grab the dough, and you just slightly twist. And then you do that again. And if you use your second hand to kind of press it out, you get a really nice crimp all the way around. And it sort of hides where you've added in that extra dough on the top, so you can't see it. So that's all you're going to do. Crimp it all the way around. Once it's crimped, you're going to put it into your oven. Hopefully you've had your oven on all this time, but if you haven't, go turn it on now. It needs to be turned to about 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 190 degrees Celsius. So turn that on, let it heat up, and you're going to put the pie in the oven. It's going to cook somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour. And you'll know it's done when you can look in the center of the pie and you see this little cross slowly moving up and down. If you see that moving up and down, and you see that your pie crust has turned golden brown, you know it's done and it's ready to eat. So 45 minutes to an hour later, this is what your pie should look like. What you're looking for, again, before you take it out of the oven, is that the insides of your pie is just slightly going up and down, or since this is a lattice, you can actually look through, and if you can see the juices really bubbling in the center, you're good. It's ready to go. Again, it's an apple pie, so if it gets slightly underbaked, no one's gonna die, but you do want to make sure that your apples get as cooked as possible. If you really want to be sure, take a fork and just poke at some of these apples, and as long as you leave little indentations, you're probably pretty good. You're ready to take it out of the oven. You're also looking for kind of a nice crispy crust around the outside edges. Apple pie is perfect served just by itself. You can have it warm, or I personally like it to put it in the fridge for a little bit and then serve it cold. It's really good with ice cream, especially vanilla ice cream, and my Uncle Bob really likes it with this wedge of cheese. So that's up to you if you want it with ice cream or cheese or just on its own, is all good. Now, I mentioned that we had some of that extra dough, and I just wanted to tell you, don't toss that out. There are so many things you can do with it. For example, tonight I'm going to make a quiche. So that's a pie that has using just that bottom crust. Another thing you can do is to actually make cinnamon rolls out of it. Roll it out just like you did with the pie, spread on a little butter, a little cinnamon, a little sugar, roll it up, cut it up, stick it in the oven about 10-15 minutes. Perfect. You're going to have these delicious little cinnamon rolls that'll be really nice that you can eat those first and then save this for when your company comes over. I hope that you get the chance to try an apple pie. I hope you agree it's not as hard as it looks, and I hope you really enjoy this simple recipe.